Here I am at Sally's Saloon, where hops are being enjoyed every day. First in this video, you'll learn about the history of the hop plant, its biology and chemistry. We then go over the ecology processes of the hop plant, its uses, and the economics related to the hop. Finally, you'll learn about the demand for the hop. Over to you guys.
Oh!
Hi!
We didn't see there.
Welcome to Hop Chats. My name is Alexa.
I'm Jen.
I'm Lita. I'm Mariana.
Well, speaking of hops, I went to an awesome brewery this weekend and had a killer IPA. I love hops.
Do you love hops? Me too. And I guess a lot of other people think that way. The demand for hops has drastically increased over the past few years. Beer Advocate listed 5 of its top 10 beers as IPAs in 2016. This increase has totally changed the hop industry. They are producing way more aroma varieties than alpha varieties than ever before. Where breweries used to just use 1 pound of hops per batch, they now use much more for those hop-forward beers.
That makes so much sense. So many of my friends love hoppy beers. Like you.
Same. What's cool is that they weren't even just used in beer. They used to be done for their medicinal purposes, treating insomnia, ulcers, IBS, and Crohn's disease. They can be used in cooking and are often used as a seasoning, offering an earthy flavor to dishes. They are even used in soaps and deodorants as an odor neutralizer. If you've ever heard of Tom's deodorant, it's in there.
Don't you use Tom's?
But beer is their primary use. It's one of the 4 main ingredients, and it's sought after for its unique flavors and other properties. Most of the revenue for hops comes from large and small breweries worldwide. And then after these breweries finish processing, the remaining hop grain can be used for livestock feed.
I also know that hop has other benefits than just flavoring. It also contains specific flavonoids called xanthohumol, which acts as antioxidants. Other flavonoids in hops have also been found to inhibit the growth of prostate cancer.
Wow, seriously? Do you know any other history about the hop?
No, I don't.
Do you know? Because I do. Surprisingly, hops was first documented in beer in the 9th century in Hildegard of Bingen, Germany. But not until the 13th century was when hops started to take over in IPAs and replace the fruit flavoring. Not only was it used in beer around that time, they were also used in religious and political purposes. I know this stuff, but I would like to know more about what exactly makes the hops so important in beer.
I know that. Its biology and chemistry may have to do with that. The bitterness comes from the essential oils and resins that can be found on the hop flower. The resins contain alpha and beta acids. The alpha acids contained in hops are called humulone, cohumulone, adhumulone, posthumulone, and prehumulone. And these are what makes the hop have a bitter taste. Hops with high concentrations of alpha acids contribute in the flavor of the beer, whereas hops with low concentration contribute to the aroma. The flavor in beer made by the hops vary depending on when the hops are added.
Oh, what does it depend on?
Well, the hops that are boiled with beer leads to a high degree of bitterness, whereas hops that are added later leads to some degrees of bitterness, and hops that are added in the end of boiling leads to a low degree of bitterness. Hops can also be added after boiling or in the very end, leading to hop aroma, and only a small amount of bitterness. Hops that have not been boiled yet are just mildly bitter.
So, what happens to the hops when they boil?
Well, the humulones get isomerized, and the bitterness is affected by the degree to which isomerization occurs. And this can be measured by IBUs. Do you know what that stands for?
I have no clue.
Well, that stands for International Bittering Units. where a higher number leads to more intense bitterness. I've also heard that isohumolone is the most frequent occurring isomer. In fact, only the alpha acids isomerize, and the beta acid have therefore very little effect on beer flavor. However, they do affect the beer's aroma and are therefore added towards the end of the boil. Beta acids that are added earlier can oxidize and form sulfur compounds and DMS, and this gives the beer unwanted flavors.
So I assume that many brewers choose hops that have low concentration of beta acids?
Yep.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. They offer a complex profile of flavors. Have any of you ever heard about how hops are processed? Well, it's actually pretty cool. It goes back to what you were saying about biology and chemistry, Mariana. The hops are harvested and dried so that the hops can be put through the process where it's used in brewing beer. Hops are available in whole leaf, pellet, or extract form, but are most commonly used in pellet form because they are lighter in weight, thus making them easier to transport and less likely to spoil. First, malt is used after being ground up. Then it is mixed with water and mashed together so that the grain starches begin to be much smaller. The hops are added with what's called wort from the malt beer, then yeast is added to the mixture so it starts fermenting. Hops are very versatile in flavor and are used in different beers so that they are sometimes added at different points within the brewing process to bring out other aromatic qualities and flavors in the beer.
Just like what Mariana was saying.
Yeah.
Exactly. Hops are sprayed, on average, with about 15 different pesticides 14 times every year. The overall production has become steady, but there are still many who argue that farming efforts need to become more traditional by different aspects of permaculture so that the earth will produce more efficiently. Annual harvesting time would lead to many traveling near or far to partake in the opportunity to get paid to harvest.
Wait, where does that money go to?
Well, that's a good question. Economically, the greater amount of money that was spent on hops by companies flowed into the farmers' pockets and the pockets of the harvesters. Families that were being paid to harvest then had funds to buy more or support their families more comfortably. Also benefiting from production of hops are obviously the breweries, who make great profit off of selling their beer. It was exciting to see that the use of hops has actually led to the reduction of food waste in London. Hackney Brewery came up with toast ale, which is dependent on one slice of bread for every one bottle made. So the unused, recycled bread is then combined with barley, oat husks, Brambling Cross, as well as Chinook hops for the end product of toast ale.
You know, I'm not even 100% sure exactly what the hop looks like.
Well, great question. First, the name hop is known as the flower or strobules of the hop plant itself, also called the Humulus lupulus, which is first believed to be cultivated in the year 736 in the area of present-day Germany. Essentially, it looks like a green pine cone with many layers to itself. It also looks like an artichoke. Hops are generally trained to shoot their growth upwards by use of wires and strings. They grow around 6 feet very gradually. Do you guys know the perfect conditions for hops to grow?
I've also heard that for full development of the chemical compounds on the hops, long periods of sun and heat is important. Most hop production occurs at 35 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Production below this temperature does not lead to satisfied production. So I don't think hops are hard to produce, but I do think that the right conditions are needed for the best results.
Well, I know that precipitation is a huge factor.
That's true. This herbaceous perennial can grow in various conditions, with its greatest production being from May to July in moist soil, like you said. It can also thrive, though, in shade and tolerate most droughts.
Whoa, it's so crazy how a plant can have such a large profile of flavor in beer and and in turn probably have such a huge economic impact.
Wait, what are the economics?
Well, craft beer, which is obviously the main use of hops, contributed around $55.8 billion to the U.S. economy in 2014, and this beer couldn't have been produced without hops. But just looking at hops, the cost varies based on the variety produced. Lower yielding varieties will cost more for both the producer and the consumer than high yielding varieties. What has been noticed across the board is that the shift from alpha varieties to aroma varieties, which are higher in value, has contributed to an overall increase in the value and production of hops. In 2015, hop producers experienced record high prices at $345.4 million.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, but that is mostly likely due to the increase in demand and therefore the fact that they are producing more. For example, in the US alone, hop stock went from around 60 million pounds produced in 2008 to over 100 million pounds so far this year.
That's crazy.
There has been a steady increase too. By 2020, it's expected that 24 million pounds of aroma hops will be needed. They will need more acreage to meet the demand too. This could make production hypothetically go up to about 501 million pounds in 2020. With that increased production, about $600 million for the industry through 2020 is reasonable, costing about $1 to $1.50 per pound of hops.
I do think it's funny though, because there's this increased demand, but so many people don't know. Even though it offers such a great flavor, the hop in beers can actually contribute to worse hangovers, sluggishness, and headaches, or just feeling sleepy. This shouldn't be surprising though, since one of its main purposes in the past was used as a treatment for insomnia.
Oh my gosh!
Wow, that explains why I was so tired after that beer this weekend.
Exactly.
Wow. So, besides the Northeast U.S., where else does the hop usually grow?
Actually, North America is really big in hops production. There are about 45,488 acres between Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Minnesota, Canada, and other states. Because hops are grown in concentrated moist temperature climates, like you guys had said, most of the world's commercial hop production occurs around the equator. Other places that produce hops include Britain, Germany, the Czech Republic, Slovenia, and New Zealand.
I wonder what type of effect all this hype over it has in those areas. Jen, is all of that demand going to have an impact on the environment where it grows?
For sure. Like I said, demand this year has been higher than ever. The amount harvested in 2015 was the highest it's been since 1915. And all 20 countries, a part of the International Hop Growers Association, experienced record harvests. There are many fears that demand will increase beyond supply in the next 5 years. A main concern is the lack of acreage available in at least US and German hop farms to meet these demands. So it's definitely going to require some more resources. Weather and precipitation are the biggest predictors of hop availability. And it's not surprising that an increase in demand and production will increase water usage. And there's been a severe drought in those northwest regions in the US over the past few years, requiring greater groundwater supplies. The increased temperatures and droughts in these areas are expected to be the new normal for the foreseeable future. And even in these areas where precipitation is not an issue, shorter winters due to climate change are expected to mean less snowpack, meaning less spring and summer melt, still calling for greater groundwater irrigation.
Wait, so does that mean we won't get to drink IPAs anymore?
Well, not exactly, but current methods of irrigation and the farming of hops will need to be shifted to meet the increased demand and the decreasing water supply.
Wow, there's so much to know about this small plant.
I guess it goes beyond just making a good IPA.
Speaking of IPAs, I'm craving one now.
Let's go to Sally's!
Here we are back at Sally's Saloon. And now that you've learned a little bit about hops, remember these facts next time you're drinking an IPA. As you know, it can be seen that the demand for hops has increased throughout the recent years, especially due to beer drinkers who enjoy hoppier types of beer. There are more breweries popping up throughout locations, focusing mainly in the United States, and the demand for hoppy beers leads to a higher production. Over the ages, this material will be more successful and have a higher demand for IPA production. Although hops are decreasing in production, the flavoring is becoming more and more popular. The United States will have an increase in demand due to popular opinion, and crop areas near the equator will hopefully expand their growing due to this boom.